We are in Mark chapter 7, and we're going to do verses 24 through 30. Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. We'll read the passage to get rolling, and then we'll go through it after that. We'll pick back up at the beginning. Verse 24, and this is in page 719 in your, if you got a handy-dandy Grace Bible, page 719. Mark chapter 7, verse 24. And from there he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered a house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him, and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." And he said to her, "For this statement you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter." And she went home and found the child lying in bed, and the demon gone. This passage is very, very interesting. It's very unique. It's very interesting. And what it does for us is it reminds us again that Jesus is absolutely no joke. Jesus does not mess around. He loves people, but the way he loves them is not the way that we oftentimes choose to be loved. Jesus is no joke. Now, in this passage here, verse 24, we see, and he arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And if this same story is in Matthew chapter 15, I think, something like that. It's recorded in Matthew as well. And in that one, we see that his disciples are with him during this time. And Mark chapter 7 and chapter 6, we see a few different times where Jesus is trying to get away. He's trying to get away with his disciples. Probably he wants to do some training and some teaching. They still struggle with a lot of what's going on with understanding who he is and his mission and the gospel. They're still struggling to understand these things, and so it's assumed that he wanted to rest for a while, to recuperate, and to do some training with his disciples. And he tried a couple times, and it never really worked out, and it doesn't necessarily work out here for him either. He goes to this Gentile land to be alone. He knows that the Jews aren't going to follow him there. The Jews are very nationalistic. They're very racist. They're not going to go into Gentile country. They're not going to go, and so he knows he's going to be alone there, and probably has much to teach his disciples. But then in verse 25 we see, but immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him, and came and fell down at his feet. 26, now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Last week, for those of you that are here, for those of you that weren't here, YouTube, anyhow, for those of you that were here, we talked about the fact that sin comes from within us. We don't blame sin on anything else. Sin does not come from without, it comes from within. We are defiled because of our hearts. Our hearts are nasty and dirty, and that's what makes us legally guilty before God. It's our hearts, and we talked about that for quite a while, and we sort of broke down some implications of that. And now Jesus is presented with a pretty big test case for that, because if there's anyone who would be defiled because of the outside, it would be this woman. She is a Gentile. Which means there's all kinds of ways where she is ceremonially unclean, where she is unfit to worship God. There's all kinds of reasons. The Jews would point to her and say, she doesn't do this, she doesn't do that, she doesn't do this, and they would have a laundry list of things that make her unclean. And then she lives in Gentile country. She has a possessed daughter. She has all these strikes against her as far as outside things go, as far as outside factors. But what Jesus said last week very specifically, as clearly as he could, he said, but sin doesn't come from the outside. we're not defiled from the outside. We're defiled because of what comes out of our heart. And so here we have a sort of a test case for that teaching. Because if there was ever a poster child for outside defilement, it would be her. She's an unclean Gentile. She lives in a pagan land. She has a possessed daughter. She has a whole bunch of factors sort of working against her, defiling her, if that's possible. Now, then she comes begging him to cast out her daughter's demon. Now, by coming to him, she's breaking all kinds of social rules. The Jews that were with Jesus, the disciples, would look at her and say, "This woman is unclean. She is absolutely unfit to come to a Jewish religious leader and to fall down and to ask of him anything. She has absolutely no right. She should be nowhere near him." And her people would also struggle with this. She was of Canaanite descent, and they had their own gods. And they also viewed the God of the Israelites as very uptight, as very restrictive. And so so for her, a Gentile, to go to the God of the Israelites, this has got to be really kind of set off some alarms in their head as well. Why would she be doing this? Why wouldn't she just go to the gods of her land, to the idols and to the gods that her people embrace? And so she's kind of breaking some pretty serious social rules here. We have evidence that the people of Tyre and Sidon, there's other stories where the people of Tyre and Sidon know of Jesus, where people come from when he's going through Galilee, where people from all over the place come, and even people from Tyre and Sidon come. And so in the passage in Matthew, she calls him Lord, Son of David. So she has a good idea of who he is. We don't know how much of Israel prophecy she understands and all of that, and if she knows about him being a Messiah. We don't know all of that, but we do know that she has a healthy understanding of who God is, and she has a pretty good understanding of who Jesus is. She calls him Lord, which is not a term that you just kind of throw around. And so, and she also understood the Son of David thing. And so there's a lot going on here in her mind that doesn't really get spelled out. But she is she's taking a very interesting risk here.